And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Payson Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, September 16th, 2024, 8 EST, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. Exciting episode this week. We are reviewing two movies, Speak No Evil, the American remake of the Danish film from 2 years ago, as well as Killer's Game, the new action film starring Dave Bautista. I say we jump right in and talk about our first movie, that being Speak No Evil, directed by James Watkins. As I said, this is a remake of a Danish film that came out, I believe, in 2022. I have not seen the original film, so I was kind of going into this movie completely blind. This movie is about a married couple who has a daughter, played by Scoot McNairy and Mackenzie Davis, the Daltons. And while on vacation in Italy, they meet a couple played by James McAvoy and Francine. I'll get her name for a second. She was in Game of Thrones. She was in The Nightingale. But Aislinn Franciosi. They meet. They start to get along, and James McAvoy's character ends up inviting the family to come visit their estate when they get back home to England. They go do that, and while they're staying with this family, they start to realize not everything is what it seems to be. Family seems to be a little odd. They have a kid who was born with a shortened tongue, so he cannot speak. But he starts to get along with the Dalton's daughter. And without getting into too many spoilers, some crazy things start to happen. I'll admit, I want to talk about what the trailer for this movie shows. Unfortunately, I do believe that the trailer definitely gave away a little bit too much. So I'm going to be talking about this movie as if you have seen the trailer. If you have not seen the trailer, I'm going to give you time to leave. But everything I am talking about is revealed in the trailer. Eventually just weird things start happening. The family decides they need to get away, and more weird things start happening. Maybe they start getting along again. Maybe tensions continue to rise. Who knows? What I will say is this is a really solid premise for a thriller. I always love movies where you have one group of characters that are in a completely different environment, and they're interacting with these other groups of characters that seem really cool, seem really nice, and then as the movie starts to go along, you start realizing there are deeper, more sinister secrets. And the other thing that I think really helps carry this movie is the performance by James McAvoy, who obviously plays Patty, the person that invites Scoot McNairy and Mackenzie Davis to his home. My gosh, he is having the time of his life in this role. I don't think I've ever seen a James McAvoy performance that I didn't like. Like he always knows the right amount of energy to bring to a character, even if that energy does seem like kind of cartoonish. He's always just a blast to watch. Obviously, I think he's phenomenal in the X-Men movies. I think he's great in Split. I think whatever you think about Split and Glass, I think you cannot deny how great of a performance he is giving in that movie. He was pretty fun in Atomic Blonde. I always love whenever I see James McAvoy in a movie, and he is easily the best part of this movie and keeps you entertained throughout the entire movie. I think the second this guy kind of arrives, I think not everything is okay with this character, but just the things he says and how he delivers these super weird things they don't seem like at first like all that big of a deal, but they're just kind of off-putting to our main characters and to us, the audience. We can't help but just be entertained by everything that Patty does in this movie, and it's just because James McAvoy is such a gosh darn entertaining actor. The first two acts of this movie do a really solid job. Building the tension, building to like these points where the story does sort of like come to like a tipping point where the pot finally starts boiling over. The reason I'm saying that is because there are a few times in this movie where that does happen. It's not like we're just waiting for one huge moment. The movie has many different like starts and stops, and I say that as a good reason. I think the first 2 acts are really, really great at just establishing this really like sweat-inducing sense of tension as you're watching this family that like they want to be nice to these other people that have just invited them into their house, but so many other weird things start happening that you just can't help but be like, man, at what point do you just say you gotta cut loose and just run? Which that is one of the faults of this movie going on from the other direction, but I'll get into that in a second. The other thing I really loved about this movie is the story with Ant, who is James McAvoy and who is Patty and Sierra's son. As we learn, he doesn't have the ability to speak. He also doesn't have the ability, with him being Danish, he doesn't have the ability to speak English, so he has no way of communicating to any of the other characters, or at least to the Daltons. And when he does become friends with the Daltons' daughter, Agnes is her name, you can tell pretty early on that he wants to say something, that he wants to let her know something, but he has literally no way of communicating with her. And I think it's just really fun seeing him on this mission of like, okay, how do I creatively tell these things to Agnes in order to get in order to have her learn like, okay, is everything okay with this family that have invited us into our house? So yeah, that was with the exception of McAvoy's performance, Ant's story and like Ant's side story in this movie is definitely my favorite part of the movie. Everything I did like this movie more. I wanted to like this movie more, but I'm just gonna get into the things that bothered me. One, I think the third act of this movie kind of becomes a little bit too convenient. Without getting everything, giving things away, even though you could probably tell what the trailer is telling you. Some things are revealed, and multiple characters are put in danger, which is usually okay for a thriller. Like, obviously, it's building towards that. But I think the issue here is, this is the major crutch of this movie that keeps me from really liking it. The main family is so stupid. Like, we make fun of we make fun of dumb characters in horror movies and thrillers all the time, but the characters in this movie, at a certain point you can chalk up some of it to like, oh, they're just so nice, like they don't want to be rude to these people that are being kind to them. But at another point, with everything that starts happening in this movie, you just got to say, how are you not running from like days beforehand? When all this weird stuff starts going down. Like, I'm just gonna give a mild spoiler. There was a point where Mackenzie Davis's character is up late at night, and she realizes that Agnes isn't in her bed, and she goes to search around the house, and she sees that Agnes has gone to sleep with Patty and Sierra. And when that happens, they decide, okay, it's time to just leave. We're just gonna get up in the middle of the night. That family just sort of crossed the line. And after everything we've seen, they start driving down the road, and Agnes says, oh no, I forgot my stuffed animal. And they decide to go back. Like, I know, like, kids, like, stuffed animals are super huge for them, but if you're a parent and you have this feeling of like, my kid is in danger, my family is in danger, I don't know how you turn around and go back to where you think you are in danger. And after that point, more weird stuff starts happening, and they never call it quits until the end of the movie. And I just think that's kind of ridiculous. When at certain points when you think the characters are about to get away, they end up running back into perilous situations for no apparent reason. And that is the main reason why just the third act just really, really frustrated me of this movie. I think there are way too many conveniences. Like, with all the stupid things that our main characters do, it's insane that like they end up living as long as they do and end up making it through all these situations kind of unharmed until the very end. I have not seen the original movie, but from everything I've heard, the original movie is like this premise for the first 2 acts, but then the third act is a lot more cynical and a lot more negative and just a lot darker in a way. And I can kind of see that this definitely feels like a more sanitized version of what this story was trying to go for. Like, I'm just thinking of the ending. Like, it's a really cool ending of what happens. But as I'm watching it as an audience member, I'm like, this feels a little studio note heavy. And part of me wonders, like, I wish the filmmakers would have had a little bit more faith to say, no, American audiences could have handled something a little bit darker. And I do think that was just kind of frustrating. Something I did like about this movie, it does give a little bit of context as to why maybe why the family is not able to communicate as well, because we do learn history that Mackenzie Davis's character did have like kind of like an accidental affair with Scoot McNairy's character. It's not really like explained too much as to how far the affair really went. All we know is like it wasn't like a full affair, but definitely Mackenzie Davis was doing some things that she shouldn't have been doing. So that does help bring a little bit of context as to why this family is a little bit on edge at first. But at the same time, you would with the level of decisions these characters make, you would not think that they're parents or that they are protecting anyone except for themselves, because they just end up giving the other family way too much credit for just these weird things that start happening. So yeah, while this is a movie that I do like the premise, there are good things in it. I think there are just a few too many things that keep me from really loving it. If I were to review it on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, 0 being awful, 10 being great, like amazing, I'm going to give it a barely passing grade of a 6. I do think for the most part, I think this movie does end up coming out to be a positive experience. I just think there are just too many frustrating elements and just too many American cliches that you see in these types of movies that keep me from really, really loving it and keep me from giving like the biggest glowing recommendation. When this movie comes out on streaming, I would recommend you see it. I do think it will be a really fun time, but it's maybe not the biggest priority you should have in terms of movies that are in theaters right now. I would probably recommend going to see other things. There are better thrillers out there. But I say we jump right into our second movie of the night, that being Killer's Game, directed by J.J. Perry. This movie follows an assassin played by Dave Bautista. His name is Joe Fields. He is he's someone who just seems to be really, really good at his job. If you ever need if you ever need to take a hit on someone, you call this guy. He's always going to get the job done well. When we open up the movie, he does a slight botch on a job. He still ends up getting the guy, but he ends up meeting a dancer at the ballet venue that he was sent to kill someone. They end up hitting it off. The next few days later, he decides to go and meet this woman again, played by Sophia Boutella, and with advice from his mentor, played by Ben Kingsley, he decides to start a relationship with her. If it seems like I'm giving a lot away here, I'm not. This is all essentially set up. Eventually, you learn that he has a chronic disease, and he decides he doesn't want to live with this if he knows that there's no way that he can cure himself. So he decides to hire a hit on himself, and if they kill him, it will send the insurance money over to Sophia Boutella. Unfortunately, the night that his contract goes live, he gets another call from the doctor that diagnosed him, telling him that there was a mess up in the diagnosis. He is completely fine, and now he is fighting for his life to stay alive because he has just ordered a contract on himself to die. First thing I want to say is we've seen this type of story many, many times. This person who has a slightly illegal job, even if they're not a bad guy, keeping it secret from the person they're in love with. Probably the most famous example of this is True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis. Obviously, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a secret agent in that movie, disguising himself as a salesman. When Dave Bautista first meets Sophia Boutella, she doesn't know that he is a hitman, and he's trying to keep that secret. We've seen this story before. Some might call it cliched. I don't really think cliches are necessarily a bad thing. Cliches are cliches for a reason. We enjoy to see it, and there are some fun stuff to be had here. And I just think, like, another reason I think this movie works for me is because I think Dave Bautista continues to show how great of an actor he is. Obviously, he was a professional wrestler, started like 20 years ago, and has now transitioned to acting throughout the past decade. I think I understand that like he doesn't have the most amount of skills that like an incredible actor has. You can very clearly tell that he cares so much about his craft and he wants to become a better actor. And even though he is like this big hulking guy, he keeps on finding roles that really, really suit him. And I almost always, even if I don't love the movies he's in, I almost always love the movie that he is in. And he ends up carrying this role really, really well. He's able to play the tough, stoic moments of this killer of Joe in a really funny way. And when Joe is more like out of his element towards the end of the movie, when he's having all these people try to kill him, when he's trying, when he's still trying to keep his life a secret from Maisie, played by Sophia Boutella. I think it's really, really funny. I think Dave Bautista is someone that can pull off action and comedy very, very well. And this is one of the better performances I think I've seen from him. In terms of the comedy in this movie has some genuinely like laugh out loud funny moments. Like I said, I think the moment when the doctor calls him and you hear like, hey man, there was a misdiagnosis. In fact, looking at your results, it seems like there's actually nothing that has the ability to kill you. The theater I was in was just dying at this point because it was like, how do you mess that up that badly? Throughout the movie, he's like, man, when I'm done with this, I'm gonna make sure that doctor's next on my list. And you're like, oh my gosh, like that was really, really funny. When the movie wants to be funny, it definitely has moments where you are laughing pretty hard. Movie's also not afraid to get violent and bloody. The blood doesn't look real in this movie. Like, I'm just gonna get that out of the way. It looks super bright, super red, but like the kills we see in this movie from the different assassins, the action scenes that go on, they're almost all brutal. They're all super violent, and I just think it does a really great job at creating this over-the-top mayhem that you love to see in these fun action movies. Movie does introduce a ton of fun like assassin characters to go up against Joe. Like there are these two there are these two Scottish brothers that go after Joe. There are these two like romantic Spaniards that are really fun. A lot of the movies like set all throughout Europe because Joe is living in England at the time. There was like this like group of like Korean bikers that end up going after Joe. Movie has no shortage of style and no shortage of like memorable characters. I can't remember a ton of their names, but I remember like all the different like iconography of these characters, how Joe ends up disposing of them. I think that was really, really fun. There are some moments in the third act, if I were to say weaker elements. Funny, both movies I'm reviewing, I just tend to have third act problems. Third act of this movie isn't bad. There are weird moments where just the action stops. Like we have this huge action scene, and then just like the action just stops, and it just really messes with the pacing. And just movies around an hour 45 probably could have cut out like 15 minutes just from like the movie stalling just in the third act, and that was a little annoying. But what are you gonna do? Ending probably seems a little too convenient in how it wraps everything up. Without spoiling anything, we learned that one of the reasons Joe can't cancel his contract is because one of the characters that he bought the contract from just wants him dead because they have a huge vendetta against him. What happens there towards the end when Joe, when all the assassins need to be taken care of? Seems like the movie was just in a rush to end itself really, really quickly, which if we would have taken some less time to stall for like these weird set pieces towards the middle, I definitely think we didn't need to rush the ending as much as it does seem we do. But yeah, I thought this was a fun balls to the wall action movie. If I were to review it on a scale of 0 to 10, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think this was a good movie. I think it accomplishes most of what it's trying to do. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel by any means. But if you're looking for a fun, over-the-top action movie, I think this is the movie that would be for you. Absolutely, like it is style over substance, but it's not always like a bad thing if the style is as good as this one. And Dave Bautista is just one of the more fun action movie stars we see today. And like of all the professional wrestlers turned actors, definitely the one that I think like is showing to be the best actor of the lot. But yeah, thank you all for watching this week. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. It helps grow our channel a lot. Next week, I'm going to be reviewing Transformers 1, the new animated Transformers movie, and at least one other movie. I'll let you guys know when that happens. Thank you all for watching, and remember, as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.